Am I real, or am I just an illusion in your head? How sure are you that what you see around here actually exists? You are used to interpreting the environment as an objective reality, not as your dream or illusion. This is the basis of your perception, worldview, and interaction with the world around you. You see different images and believe that these images are not born inside your head, but outside its borders. But there is no way to prove that. It's your faith, the idea you believe in, your philosophy. Great philosophers did not discover the truth. They invented philosophical foundations on the basis of which a certain interpretation of the surrounding world became possible, very comfortable and ordinary for you, but still an interpretation. We use numbers to describe quantity. The most popular is the decimal system, but no binary or decimal system is an objective reality. It is a philosophical choice of interpretation of the surrounding reality. But why did the decimal system become popular? You'll say it's convenient because 10 fingers, but why 60 inches the clock fingers and 360 inches the compass? It's just that these philosophical concepts were invented by the Chinese, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, much earlier than modern mathematics. It's just fiction, the choice of how to interpret the surrounding reality. And on this basis is built any science. No system can justify its own reasons, because they already have to accept these basics. What you think is obvious is the result of a philosophical choice made by you. Science begins not with evidence, but with an axiom. Isaac Newton invented the philosophical foundations, axioms for traditional physics. He started with pure philosophy. He sat down and began to think like a philosopher. What is it around me? In order to build science, you first have to come up with a philosophy on which it will be based. You need a philosophical foundation from which to draw further laws. Isaac sat and thought, and he came up with it. He invented 4 philosophical bases, axioms, on which all physics was built. Absolute space. Space exists on its own, independent of bodies. Absolute time. Time flows evenly, regardless of events. Determinism. If all the forces and initial conditions are known, movement can be accurately predicted. Mechanicism. The world works as a mechanism. The laws of nature are the same in all points of the universe and do not depend on place and time. On these 4 philosophical bases, he creates all his physics. First, any body on which no forces act upon it are equal to 0 maintains a state of quietness or uniform rectilinear motion until this state changes the forces applied to it. Second, the more force is applied to the body, the greater its acceleration will be. Third, each action has equal force and opposite in the direction of counteraction. Everything can be described mathematically. That is, the surrounding universe reality can be described mathematically. It doesn't prove at all that the world can be described by numbers. This is the method of solution of another philosopher, Pythagoras. Newton used this as the basis for his physics. But someone can say, because it really works, really describes this reality, correctly describes, and is very much wrong, because it is not so. For we have the philosopher Albert Einstein, almost 200 years later, has made his laws. Newton argued that time and space are absolute, and Einstein says space and time are relative. That is, he began to dissect the same philosophical foundations and began to beat on the most painful. Started with something that was unprovable and questioned it. Newton has absolute time, and Einstein has relative time. Einstein can slow down time. That is, the higher the speed, the more time slows down. The same with mass. Newton's mass is constant, and Einstein's mass can change, can grow with increasing speed. So it turns out that those philosophical foundations that Newton chose, they do not correspond to the philosophical foundations that Einstein chose. It is impossible to prove which of them is right. Everyone is right in their system. Einstein has the movement of particles not dependent on the observer, And in quantum theory, depending on the observer, there is a change in the state of the electron. The fifth postulate of Euclid: through a point not lying on this line, you can pass no more than one parallel line. This is a philosophical basis. I mean, it can never be proven. You just have to believe it. But at some point, another philosopher comes along and says that I don't want to believe it. I want to come up with other conditions. And let's count not in two-dimensional space, but in three-dimensional. And it turns out that you can draw a line, not one, but many lines. We interpret reality in this way. But if we change the way we interpret reality, then we have an axiom destroyed. Philosophers interpret our reality. Many are afraid of change and want to live in the interpretation they have lived since childhood. And when some philosopher comes and speaks, I think of a new approach to perception. People who are so innovative start criticizing immediately. What you call objectively is your interpretation of the surrounding reality. As a result of evolution, humans have adapted to interpret reality in one way. And insects, bees, see the ultraviolet. You don't. So it was with the myths of the Greeks, the Slavic myths that replaced Christianity. It doesn't mean at all that some new idea will always win. It doesn't mean at all that there really is an idea that better describes the reality for all people. It will win, because in this world, well-organized small groups often dominate and beat the poorly organized crowd. Here comes a new philosophical idea. It describes better, but it contradicts the other idea that we get a lot of money from. That is, a new philosophical concept has emerged, saying that we don't owe anything to any church because God is already hanging on the cross for us. We don't owe anything to anyone. Thank you all. Everyone is free. And there is a Catholic Church in which they say that you were born and already should, born and already guilty. So what? It comes out of the Reformation Wars, because there are people who benefit from this idea. They try to sell it further, and other people don't benefit at all, and it goes straight to death and murder. So there is a constant struggle, evolution, and competition between different philosophical ideas. And if some good idea describes reality better, it is more universal, and from it more of a particular use, that is, the prediction that this idea will replace another old philosophical idea, but not always, because old philosophical ideas can't bear the benefit-specific interests, and they will not be interested in seeing the situation change. And then there are very interesting mechanisms in general, because the normal selection of us took place along the path of group conformism and submission to the authority and will of the crowd. Why? Because in a group we are stronger than one. Therefore, it takes some mechanism for us to believe any nonsense, if that nonsense is broadcast either by the crowd or by the authority of the crowd. That is, in the crowd, a person loses his identity and he can very easily absorb foreign philosophical ideas. That is, people think that this is my idea, I am rational, and in fact, nothing like it, even close. But it's not a fact that the new idea that came up is a good idea, better than another idea. For example, you know such a famous philosopher as Sigmund Freud. He wrote his philosophical treatise in his time, where I described it, and beyond. So he created this, it's a kind of philosophical work. It doesn't correlate with reality. It's not a real map of the brain. He's an artist. He sees it. He wrote that this is my intelligence. It's me. I'm the overself. It's some kind of moral norms, communities, to which I want to respond. Is that scientific? No, it's actually a work of art. He interpreted everything in man and launched this beautiful idea. We're all like that. We want to believe there's a reason for everything, everywhere, because the one who believed in it survived more often than the one who didn't. The second theme is a lot of people who are fans of Sigmund Freud, and they think it's the ultimate truth because it's Sigmund Freud. Freud talked about the fact that you had some reasons as a child, and very often related to sex, and you were traumatized somewhere there, and it affects your entire future life, and you need to be counted. You need to dig into your past. Man walks year, 2, 10, is treated indefinitely. Why? Because the model of Sigmund Freud allows you to monetize yourself very well. In the Sigmund Freud model, a philosophical client comes to a person, and the psychologist says, "Sit back in your chair, let's explore what you had in your past, what you dreamed of. Did your parents offend you? Let's dig into your sexual experience." And they dig, and every time they adjust the model, they dig until you have money. Sigmund Freud introduced a lot of special terminology with which you can monetize endlessly, but this model has proved to be super efficient, because with its help, the psychologist can earn endless money. That is, the client is not treated, he lies on this couch and endlessly listens to the stories of a psychologist. So, at the end, I would like to say, no idea is true. The idea you believe in is your philosophy. You believe in something and thus interpret the world around you.
So this episode has come to an end. If you liked the episode, give it a like, write comments, and click the bell to be first to know about the next episodes.